The morning began, as all Karen Varen's mornings did, with the precise, rhythmic application of control. The sunlight hitting the marble kitchen island was calibrated. The low-fat, organic microgreen smoothie was exactly 18 degrees Celsius, and most importantly, the driveway was clear, awaiting the arrival of the $80,000 centerpiece of her summer, the custom-crafted, architectural-grade, aluminum and cedar Riviera pergola. The structure wasn't just an awning. It was the final, critical element of the multi-million-dollar renovation of her East Hampton estate, the backdrop for the highly anticipated St. Jude's Gala she was hosting in exactly 2 weeks. Failure was not an option. Imperfection was an enemy. When the truck arrived, a monstrous, diesel-chugging beast that looked utterly inappropriate idling against the quiet serenity of her private lane, Karen was already waiting, her posture a masterpiece of impatience and authority. She didn't wait for the driver, a weary-looking man named Daryl, with a 3-day stubble and eyes that had seen too many sunrises, to exit the cab. She was already halfway down the drive, tablet in hand, checking the manifest details she'd been obsessing over for months. "That's container 77A9, correct?" Karen's voice cut through the hum of the truck's engine, a precise, upper-register sound honed by years of boardroom negotiations and private club memberships. Daryl fumbled out of the cab, already sweating in the late May sun. "Ma'am, it's 77B according to the tracking system. Right here." He tapped the massive, dull gray side of the 40-foot container. "Manifest says high-value structural components, going to the Varen residence. You sign here, I drop the load, and I'm gone." He held out a thick tablet. Karen didn't touch the tablet. She narrowed her eyes at the container. 77B. She distinctly remembered confirming the number 77A9 with Mr. Sterling, the owner of Riviera Luxury Structures, during their final, highly stressful conversation about the custom powder coating. A small, icy kernel of unease formed in her stomach. "I need to verify the contents before I affix my signature," she stated, making it less a request and more a declaration of universal law. Daryl sighed, the sound a ragged whisper of a man who'd been on the road since 3 a.m. "Ma'am, this is a sealed, bonded unit. I'm logistics. I don't touch the seal. And I am the client who just wired the final $40,000 installment for a structure that must be erected within 72 hours. Either you break the customs seal or I call Mr. Sterling directly and have your company flagged for non-compliance." The threat was implicit. She didn't just call. She destroyed. Daryl knew the type. He looked at the perfect, untouched pavement of her drive, then at the massive box behind him, and relented. Getting into a conflict with a Karen was never worth the paperwork. "Fine, but any delays, and I clock you for detention time, which you pay for." Daryl found his bolt cutters and, with a grim set to his jaw, snipped the thick, braided steel cable securing the main doors. The sound was sharp, metallic, and deeply unsettling. Karen stepped back, ready to critique the crating and labeling of the pergola components. She expected the rich scent of cedar and the cool glint of precision-milled aluminum. Daryl grabbed the heavy steel bar and pulled. The doors grated open, revealing not a meticulously packed high-value shipment, but a solid, oppressive wall of white. The light seemed to dim as Karen stared. Her mind, usually a supercomputer processing data points, sputtered. The container was packed, floor to ceiling, wall to wall, with industrial-sized packages of toilet paper. Not the quilted 4-ply chamomile-infused rolls she used, but harsh, single-ply institutional-grade rolls, wrapped in cheap plastic film. It looked less like a delivery and more like the supply cache for a minor regional airport. Daryl whistled low. "Well, I'll be damned. That's a whole lot of paper." The shock didn't register as disbelief in Karen. It registered as a profound personal insult. Her face, usually smooth and impassive, tightened into a mask of pure, white-hot fury. "This is not acceptable," she articulated, her voice dangerously quiet. "This is not my pergola. This is not structural components. This is waste product." "Look, ma'am, I just bring what the manifest says," Daryl repeated, trying to maintain distance. He held up his tablet, navigating to the load description. "See? Shipment 77B, destination Varan, contents. Paper products, bulk order 9811. I don't know what to tell you. I told you the manifest was wrong. Karen finally exploded, the volume echoing off the stucco walls of her mansion. I ordered an $80,000 Riviera pergola. I dealt with Mr. Sterling himself. This is an error of catastrophic magnitude. You need to have this entire vile heap removed and replace it immediately with my correct order. She snatched the manifest tablet from Daryl's hand, her fingers tracing the screen with frantic, furious speed. Her pergola, the custom dimensions, the specific powder coat, none of it was there. Only the bulk order number and the Varan address. Daryl held his hands up. I can't remove it. Once it's dropped, I'm already booked for my next pickup. I don't have the paperwork for a return or a swap. You are telling me, Karen said, her voice dropping back to the dangerous whisper, that you intend to leave a 40-foot storage unit filled with toilet paper, blocking the access to my estate, 2 weeks before a major charitable event? It's on your property, ma'am. You signed for it. Well, you didn't sign, but you verified the address and the container number. Karen shoved the tablet back at him. It was true. She had authorized the drop based on the arrival of the correct container number. 77B was close enough to 77A9 in her mind, a minor administrative typo. She hadn't signed the contents verified line. She never would have. She spun away, pulling her phone from her pocket and dialing the direct line for Riviera Luxury Structures. It rang once, twice, then clicked to an automated menu. Thank you for calling Riviera Luxury Structures. To speak to a sales representative, press 1. For accounting, press 2. For deliveries, press 3. For all other inquiries, please hang up and email us. Mr. Sterling, she hissed into the phone, ignoring the menu. You will answer this phone immediately, or I will initiate a full clawback of every cent I've spent with your fraudulent company, and I will contact every single one of your high-net-worth clients. The phone simply repeated, to speak to a sales representative, press 1. Daryl started his engine. The diesel roar was loud and final. Ma'am, I gotta go. The container is secure. Have a nice day. You stop that truck right now, Karen shrieked, sprinting towards the cab. But Daryl, seizing his opportunity, threw the truck into gear and rumbled away, leaving the colossal, white paper-filled steel box stranded exactly where he'd placed it, jutting out, partially blocking the main entry gate. Karen stood alone, hyperventilating, the smell of cheap paper and exhaust fumes replacing the expensive manufactured fragrance of her morning. She stared at the container, a monument to corporate incompetence, a grotesque, cheap joke played at her expense. It was impossible to ignore. It was an $80,000 monument to nothing but paper. Then, she noticed something small on the side of the shipping container, something below the official, printed high-resolution tracking sticker. It was a secondary, poorly applied label, a crude sticker made of faded thermal paper almost peeling off. She strode up to it, her silk scarf momentarily forgotten. She peeled back the edge of the official sticker to reveal the label underneath. It was a faded shipping label, bearing an old, defunct P.O. box number, a specific complex shipping code, and an unmistakable logo. The logo was not Riviera Luxury Structures. It was the stylized serpentine K of Kaiserman Logistics. Karen went utterly still. She hadn't seen that logo in years, not since she had systematically and ruthlessly executed the hostile takeover that drove Kaiserman's CEO, her bitter professional rival, Simon Cross, into financial ruin and a very public nervous breakdown 6 months ago. She hadn't just beaten him. She had humiliated him. A cold, visceral understanding replaced her rage. This wasn't an administrative error involving the Riviera Pergola Company. This was targeted. This was surgical. This was personal. The bulk order number, 9811, she realized, wasn't random. It matched the final 4 digits of Simon Cross's childhood home address, a detail only she, who had overseen the forensic investigation into his finances, would know. Karen looked at the towering, obscene white mountain of cheap toilet paper, now permanently fixed to her lawn, mocking her perfection. The container wasn't just blocking her gate. It was a Trojan horse of retribution. She pulled out her phone again, this time not to call Riviera, but to call her chief of security. Her eyes, usually cold, now held a glint of predatory focus. The stakes were no longer about a party. They were about survival. She had thought she had won. Now she realized the game had just started. The silence that followed the departure of Daryl's truck was not peaceful. It was the heavy, pressurized calm before a detonation. Karen didn't move for a full 60 seconds, her eyes locked on the crude, peeling Kaisermann Logistics label. The setting sun caught the edge of the steel container, turning its dull gray surface into a mirror reflecting her own rigid, incandescent face. Simon Cross had dared to violate the sanctity of her property, of her life, by planting this cheap, oversized monument to her ruthless efficiency right where she was supposed to entertain the elite of New York philanthropy. Survival, she realized, was no longer about the pergola. It was about crushing the insolence of a man she had already left for dead. Her chief of security, a hulking ex-military man named Richter, answered on the first ring. "Richter, I need 2 things immediately," Karen commanded, her voice now steady, cold, and entirely devoid of emotion. "First, mobilize the rapid response team. I want this 50-ton metal box gone by midnight. I don't care if you have to torch the locks and fly it out by helicopter. It must not be visible from the house or the main road by dawn. Secure all documentation, photos, and video proof of the contents. Do not touch the paper itself. Ma'am, a full shipping container is outside the scope of rapid deployment. It's a hazmat situation if we breach it without manifest permission. We need a specialized heavy lift company, and none are on standby this side of the city." Richter's professional caution was a low, steady rumble in her ear. "Then buy the specialized heavy lift company, Richter. You have 1 hour. Do not fail me." "What is the second thing?" Richter paused. "The second thing, ma'am? I have my priorities. The second thing I need is contact information for Simon Cross. Current phone, last known address, and the name of his current legal representation. I want him on the phone, on speaker, in the private study, in less than 20 minutes. He vanished 6 months ago after the liquidation. We'll have to ping his offshore entities. It might take longer than 20, Karen. Then you must be very persuasive with the offshore entities, Richter. I'll be waiting." She disconnected, snapping the phone shut. Karen retreated to her study, a room designed for maximum intimidation, all dark mahogany and polished brass. She poured a glass of chilled mineral water, but didn't drink. She needed clarity, not comfort. She began pacing the Persian rug, formulating the opening move of her counterattack. Simon thought a humiliating inconvenience was a suitable revenge. He was about to learn that when you strike Karen Varen, you should strike to kill, because anything less simply opens the door for her to finish the job. Richter was good, but slow. 15 minutes passed. Karen heard the muffled sounds of engines outside, not the heavy lift rig she requested, but the smaller black SUVs of her security detail arriving. She heard the distant metallic scrape of tools. She looked out the window. The container still dominated the landscape. The phone rang. It was Richter. "I have him, ma'am. He's using an untraceable VoIP line. He's on the move, somewhere in the city, but he's expecting the call. He sounds pleased." "Put him through," Karen instructed, switching the phone to the study's speaker system. The room filled with the crackle of a bad connection, followed by a voice Karen hadn't heard since she personally signed the papers dissolving his company. A voice that was now silkier, deeper, and laced with triumph. "Karen, to what do I owe this utterly predictable pleasure?" "Simon Cross." The voice was unmistakable. Karen stood tall, projecting authority over the wires. "Simon, you've made a mistake." "Have I?" "My delivery, 77B, seems to have made it exactly to the address specified on the manifest. I recall you being quite particular about ensuring every delivery makes it through." A low, dry chuckle followed. "Quite the shipment, isn't it? Top tier, institutional single-ply? The rough stuff. A testament to cost-cutting efficiency. Something you taught me, actually. You delivered $80,000 worth of refuse to my property, blocking the entrance to my home 2 weeks before a major charity function. This is beyond vandalism, Simon. This is commercial terrorism. Do you realize the fines and the civil suit I can launch against the shell company you used?" "Ah, the money. So small a thing to you, Karen. and my shell company is legally dissolved. I paid cash for the container, the truck, and the driver's silence. It's an anonymous, untraceable gift from a very, very old enemy. The cost was worth every dime to see that look on your face, which I can perfectly picture, by the way. Contorted, furious, and utterly helpless. Karen smiled, a tight, cold curve of her lips. Helpless? Simon, you sent me the equivalent of a single, highly inefficient paperweight. I will have it removed, the damage assessed, and the cost of the disruption, I estimate a minimum of $5 million. Considering the gala's contracts, will be sent directly to whatever anonymous backwater you're hiding in. You missed the point, Karen. It's not about the money. It's about the time. It's about the humiliation. That pergola was your statement piece. The gala is your annual public affirmation that you are untouchable. And now you are a logistics failure. That container is registered as a secure bonded shipment containing export materials. Removing it requires federal customs clearance, a certified hazmat inspection, and 3 permits that take a minimum of 4 business days to acquire. And guess what? It's Friday afternoon. A sudden sharp dread pierced Karen's composure. Customs, bonded export. Simon, using his deep knowledge of global logistics from his former life, hadn't just shipped paper. He'd created a legal and bureaucratic anchor. You're bluffing, Karen said, though the smile was gone. Am I? Simon's voice was triumphant. I learned from the best. I looked at your schedule, Karen. The installation crew for the Riviera was scheduled to arrive at 6 a.m. tomorrow. They won't be able to access the site. The tent installers arrive Monday. They won't be able to drop their equipment. Every hour that passes costs you political capital, darling. You have 2 options. Break the federal bond and face the consequences of customs fraud, or wait for the bureaucratic machine to churn, which means that White Whale will be the centerpiece of your little fundraiser. The threat was brutally effective. The East Hampton elite lived for gossip and public failures. The sight of a toilet paper fortress on her lawn would be a career-ending social disaster. You want something, Simon, Karen stated, cutting through his self-satisfaction. Revenge is never enough for you. What is the price to make this atrocity disappear? There's the pragmatist. You learn quickly. Simon's voice softened slightly. A tactic Karen knew meant he was about to deliver the killing blow. The price is simple. I want Varen Ventures to officially and publicly cease all operations in the Asian logistics sector. You dismantle your entire division there, the one you built on the ashes of my company, and you issue a public, signed apology to all former Kaiserman employees for their undue hardship. Do that, and the manifest suddenly changes, the permits appear, and the container is gone by Tuesday. Karen gripped the back of her leather chair, knuckles white. The Asian sector was the most profitable, fastest-growing part of Varen Ventures. It represented $300 million in annual revenue, and conceding it was unthinkable. You're asking for my right arm, Simon. You're insane. No, Karen. I'm simply asking for the cost of my humiliation, paid in kind. You lose control. You lose face. You lose profit. And you will do it because if you don't, I will leak photos of your new acquisition to page 6 and the Hamptons Chronicle by morning. Karen had seconds to choose between a catastrophic public relations disaster that would undermine her business globally or voluntarily cutting off her most profitable division. The phone line hummed, waiting for her answer. I won't dismantle $300 million in revenue for a shipping error, Karen hissed. I'll find another way. Wrong answer, Simon said, his tone chillingly casual. The photos have already been sent to my source. They have a pre-scheduled upload time of 9 a.m. EST tomorrow, Saturday. I highly doubt any of your charity committee members will be able to ignore the front page spread. Karen Varen's million-dollar blunder, pergola turns into paper fort. Good luck removing that container before the press arrives. Enjoy your weekend, Karen. The line went dead. The silence in the study was now absolute. Karen sank into her chair, the adrenaline crash leaving her momentarily stunned. She had always controlled the narrative, the assets, the outcome. Now, Simon controlled the clock, the law, and the press. She leaned forward, her elbows on the desk, forcing her mind back into military mode. The clock was ticking toward 9 a.m. She had roughly 12 hours. She buzzed Richter on the internal intercom. Richter, forget the heavy lift. You were right. We can't touch it, but we can move the press. Richter's voice was cautious. How, ma'am? They're already on standby for the gala prep. You are going to find Daryl, the driver, the man with the 3-day stubble. He signed the delivery record, didn't he? And he saw the contents. Karen's eyes narrowed. Simon Cross is using this as a distraction. He's counting on me focusing on the container. But what if the container isn't the only move? Richter, I want you to start a full financial autopsy on Kaiser Mann Logistics and all its subsidiaries, including the defunct ones, looking for any recent large cash withdrawals or asset sales. But pay special attention to Riviera luxury structures. The line had gone silent, but the weight of Marcus Thorne's surprise was palpable through the speaker. Karen Varan, a woman who had orchestrated his near ruin 7 years ago, was now delivering the password to his world. A catastrophic logistical failure perpetrated by their shared, despised enemy Simon Cross. Simon, the paper, Marcus finally drawled, the sound a low, cynical rasp. That is a remarkably petty form of vengeance. Even for him. It's not petty, Marcus. It's surgical, Karen corrected, her voice still coiled with tension. He's using customs law to turn a shipment into an immovable object and the press to turn it into a public spectacle. He wants the Asian sector of Verin Ventures dismantled. He's holding my reputation hostage. You are the only person I know who operates outside the conventional timeline. I don't operate outside the timeline. Karen, I simply compress it at an exorbitant rate, Marcus countered, a dangerous amusement entering his voice. He ran a network of specialized, off-the-books construction and supply services, capable of sourcing anything from rare Venetian marble to a fully fabricated event structure, often using questionable permits, gray market components, and crews that materialized and vanished like mist. A pergola, better than Riviera, installed and ready for show on the secondary lawn, less than 12 hours from now. Yes, a statement piece. The gala guests must look at it and forget there was ever a colossal steel box filled with public bathroom supplies at the front gate. And what about the colossal steel box at the front gate? It remains. It's legally bonded. We can't touch it without triggering federal scrutiny until Monday. It needs to be obscured, but your priority is the replacement structure. Marcus laughed, a short, sharp bark that held no humor. You're asking me to perform an $80,000 miracle while navigating around an unmovable monument to your bad karma. My fee, Karen, is going to be astronomical. I'll need triple the market rate just for the logistical risk. The price is irrelevant, Marcus. The quality and the timeline are all that matter. Just tell me what you need. Karen was already pulling up her personal accounts, ready to wire millions, but Marcus wasn't interested in her money. No, I don't need your money. I need leverage. You cost me everything, Karen. You cut my supply lines, you weaponized my financial data, and you drove Thorne & Co. into the ground. My fee is this. When I need a favor, a significant one, from Verin Ventures, any favor, no questions asked, no legal recourse, you will grant it. I want a signed, non-revocable, legally binding document guaranteeing me one full, unrestricted access pass to the Verin Ventures infrastructure for one defined transaction. You sign, and the structure is yours. Karen's breath hitched. A pass into Verin Ventures infrastructure was a pass into billions of dollars, proprietary algorithms, and state secrets. It was a blank check on her corporate soul. It was a price higher than anything Simon Cross had demanded. Cross wanted her out of a region. Marcus wanted a seat at her table, a crowbar into her vault. That is absurd, Marcus. That is commercial treason. That is my insurance. Karen, you sign or the press has its scoop. Your gala is ruined, and Simon Cross wins his Cold War. Choose. Karen looked out at the black silhouette of the container. She looked at her phone, the clock ticking toward 8:15 p.m. Simon had given her an ultimatum. The Asian sector or the destruction of her reputation. Marcus was offering a third path, a temporary fix, but at the cost of giving up a nuclear option to a man she could not trust. But without the gala, without her image intact, the Asian sector wouldn't matter anyway. She needed to survive the night to fight the war. Send the contract, she said, her voice barely a whisper. The ultimate surrender. My legal team will review it, but I will sign the non-revocable clause within the hour. Deliver the structure. Smart choice. Karen, the price of survival always exceeds the cost of goods. Marcus hung up. Meanwhile, in the small, chaotic subterranean command center Richter had established in the estate's disused bunker, the screens glowed with financial forensics. Ma'am, we found it, Richter's voice crackled over the secure intercom. He sounded more energized than Karen had ever heard him. Simon didn't just target Riviera. He executed a textbook, small-scale asset flip. Riviera Luxury Structures was acquired 3 months ago by a holding company called Paperclip Investments, LLC. Classic shell game. The CEO of Paperclip is Daryl, the driver you met. He's just a figurehead. Brilliant. Predictable, Karen murmured, reviewing the legal document from Marcus that had just appeared on her screen. She signed it digitally, her hand shaking slightly, and sent it back. What about my pergola? If he controls Riviera, he controls the inventory. Exactly. Riviera recently registered a large custom aluminum structure for a private promotional display. Dimensions matching yours exactly. It was shipped yesterday, but not to your home. It's currently in a secure warehouse facility in the industrial zone of Long Island City, Queens. Address 4803 52nd Street, Long Island City. Why? Because that address is the registered corporate headquarters of Paperclip Investments. And, ma'am, the building has a rooftop terrace. According to the blueprints filed, they're hosting a small, private launch party for a new logistics software this Saturday morning, starting at 9 a.m. A wave of icy clarity washed over Karen. Simon wasn't just planning to humiliate her in the Hamptons. He was planning to celebrate her destruction on a rooftop terrace in Queens, using her $80,000 Riviera pergola as the centerpiece of his triumphant return. He had traded her opulent East Hampton address for his gritty, triumphant launch event. He hadn't just stolen her structure. He had hijacked her narrative. The 9 a.m. deadline isn't just for the press leak, Richter. It's for his party, Karen concluded, slamming her hand onto the desk. He wants to be toasting his success under my cedar and aluminum roof while the world watches me lose face. Cancel the pursuit for Daryl. He's irrelevant. We need to focus on what matters now. Phase 2. By 1:30 a.m., the Varon estate was a hive of controlled, clandestine activity. Marcus Thorne's crew arrived, not in loud trucks, but in 3 large, unmarked, climate-controlled semi-trailers that slid silently down the secondary service road. The team was a crew of shadows, specialized riggers, engineers and welders who worked with the precise, practiced movement of highly paid military contractors. The structure they unloaded was stunning, an enormous, black steel and glass pavilion, minimalist and aggressively modern, a stark contrast to the Riviera's classic cedar look. It was the architectural equivalent of a declaration of war. The design is called Ares, Karen, Marcus said, emerging from the darkness, a ghost in a tailored black jacket. He held a signed copy of the contract. It's stronger, faster to assemble, and frankly, more intimidating than the Riviera ever was. You're welcome. Does it fit the footprint on the secondary lawn? Karen asked, ignoring the taunt. It's being adapted to the footprint as we speak. My lead engineer is welding the base supports to the subsurface concrete now. It's permanent, Karen. Like our agreement. He tapped the contract. Karen looked past the installation, across the expanse of her lawn to the main gate. Richter's team had been ingenious. They couldn't move the container, so they had built a temporary, decorative screen around it. A towering wall of thick green canvas covered in hyper-realistic, high-definition floral print, a wall of fake flowers hiding a mountain of real toilet paper. From the road, it looked like a temporary privacy hedge for the gala prep. The humiliation was contained for now. The tension was a physical pressure in the air. The clock was ticking toward 5 a.m., the time the first Riviera installation crew was originally scheduled to arrive. Suddenly, a red light began flashing erratically on one of the screens in Richter's portable monitoring station. It was the GPS ping from the untraceable VoIP phone Simon Cross had used. "Ma'am, Simon's phone just came back online," Richter announced. He stopped moving. He's holding steady at a single address in Long Island City. Karen and Marcus stared at the address on the screen. 4803 52nd Street, Queens. He's at the warehouse, Karen breathed. He's there, waiting for the morning, ready to raise my pergola on his rooftop. You're running out of runway, Karen, Marcus noted, his voice low. My structure will be finished by 6 a.m., giving you just enough time to brief the media about your minor design change. But Simon wins the narrative if he gets to show off your structure tomorrow. Karen's eyes, glinting in the dark from the reflection of the welding sparks, hardened into steel. The cost of Marcus's miracle was a debt that would haunt her business. The theft of the pergola was an insult she couldn't tolerate. She had traded her corporate security for a temporary win. Now she needed to make Simon Cross pay for the entire transaction. Marcus, I want to modify the contract, Karen said, turning to him. The favor. I'll give you two. One is the access pass. The second, I want you and your crew to be on retainer for the next 72 hours. And I want to change the delivery address for my original Riviera pergola. I want it delivered and installed at a new location. Tonight. Marcus raised a questioning eyebrow. Where? Karen pulled up the aerial map of Long Island City, zooming in on the industrial zone. She didn't choose the warehouse next door. She didn't choose the empty lot across the street. Her finger landed on the largest, most prominent skyscraper in the district, a Bra. The East Hampton dawn was still hours away, but the Varon estate had been transformed into a cold, efficient war room. The rhythmic tack-tack-tack of Marcus, Thorne's welding crew permanently affixing the massive Aries pergola to the secondary lawn, was the soundtrack to Karen Varon's counter-strike. Richter stood before Karen in the study, a satellite uplink map of Long Island City dominating the wall, its vibrant red targeting two adjacent buildings, 4803 52nd Street, Simon's warehouse, and the towering, gleaming glass spire of the Trans-Global Tower. Marcus's team. The infiltration unit is in position, Richter reported, his voice a low monotone. They're entering the 4803 facility now via the sub-level utility tunnels. The building is industrial, low security. They confirm the Riviera pergola components are crated and staged on the rooftop, ready for morning assembly. Good, Karen said, not taking her eyes off the screen. Now, where is the most important component? Daryl. At that moment, the study door opened. Marcus Thorne walked in, followed by two silent men wearing nondescript work uniforms. Between them, Daryl, the sweaty delivery driver from 12 hours prior and the legal CEO of Paperclip Investments, was being escorted. Daryl's face was pale, his hands bound loosely with flexible nylon ties. He wasn't aggressive. He was simply terrified. Daryl here was enjoying a pre-dawn diner breakfast in Queens, completely unaware of his rise to corporate prominence, Marcus said, nodding toward the driver. He's intact but extremely nervous. He understands that your lawyers are, to put it mildly, more aggressive than his. Karen dismissed the escorts with a curt wave and stepped forward until she was inches from Daryl, the scent of her expensive perfume clashing violently with the lingering grease and fear coming off him. Sit, she instructed, pointing to a rigid, uncomfortable antique chair. Daryl obeyed instantly. Mr. Varon, I didn't know, Daryl stammered, his eyes darting frantically between Karen and the silent, imposing figure of Marcus. Simon just paid me. $2,000 cash to be the registered owner, another $300 to drive the truck. He said it was a simple logistics job, tax avoidance stuff. I swear I didn't know about the paper or the felony customs charges. Of course you didn't, Daryl, Karen said, her voice dripping with false empathy. Simon Cross is an architect of ruin. He uses people like you as disposable components. But here is the truth. You are the legally registered CEO of the company that committed corporate espionage and theft against Varon Ventures. When the federal authorities start tracing the paper trail from that container on my lawn, you, Daryl, will be the first name on the indictment. Simon is gone. You are here. Daryl's composure broke. No, he promised me immunity. He said it was untraceable. Nothing is untraceable to Varon Ventures, Karen stated, a chilling lie delivered with conviction. Now stop talking about the paper. The paper is the distraction. I know Simon bought Riviera, and I know your company is staging my stolen pergola for his launch party at 9 a.m. The question is, where did Simon get the capital? She leaned down, her gaze boring into him. Buying a luxury structures company, commissioning a massive container shipment, and paying for multiple shell companies, that takes serious, immediate cash, Daryl. He's been broke for 6 months. Who is Simon's silent partner? Who gave him the bridge loan to finance his little revenge fantasy? Daryl hesitated, chewing his lip. He called it the Angel, a private investor. They insisted on handling the money transfer themselves. Everything was paid to Riviera via a single massive wire the day before I drove the truck. It was wired from a bank in Zurich. Richter immediately started typing, tracking the lead. A Zurich wire. That's a strong firewall. Keep going, Daryl. What did the Angel ask for? Karen pressed. Bridge loans always have ruinous collateral. What did Simon put up to guarantee a loan that big? Daryl finally cracked, tears welling up as he realized his life was forfeit. The only thing he had left. The patent. The cross-flow AI logistics routing software. The one he'd been working on for 10 years. The one that was supposed to save Kaiser Man. Karen froze. The cross-flow AI. It wasn't just routing software. It was a quantum-enhanced optimization algorithm that Varen Ventures had been trying to acquire for years. It was worth billions. The loan agreement, Daryl. Where is the physical contract detailing the terms of that patent transfer? The warehouse, Daryl gasped. Not in the office. In the safe. The old vault in the basement of 4803. Simon said he'd only retrieve it after the launch, after Varen Ventures was humiliated. Karen looked at the uplink map, her eyes blazing. The vault. The original pergola was on the roof, the proof of the heist. The patent transfer document was in the basement, the key to Simon's complete and irreversible ruin. Simon had made 2 fatal mistakes. He used a financial backer, and he kept the proof of that backer and his own final asset close by. Karen switched to the secure line connected to Marcus Thorne's tactical team. Change of mission. Priority 1 is still the Riviera Pergola extraction from the rooftop. But I need a second team to breach the basement vault and retrieve the contract for the cross-flow AI patent transfer. Now, miles away in Long Island City, Marcus Thorne's infiltration team, led by a wiry demolition expert named Cassian, was in motion. On the roof of 4803 52nd Street, 3 men moved with silent, oiled efficiency. The disassembled Riviera Pergola lay in 4 massive, distinct crates, ready for the crane. Target located. Crates sealed with standard magnetic locks. We're swapping them out now, Cassian whispered into his earpiece. The crew quickly removed the original crates and replaced them with identically sized, identically weighted crates fabricated from cheap plywood and concrete ballast, the ultimate bait and switch. Pergola secured. Moving to transport rig. Simultaneously, the second team was already in the damp, freezing cold basement of the warehouse. The vault was a relic, an ancient steel door from a forgotten era of manufacturing. I have the schematics. Richter's voice guided them from East Hampton. It's a 3-tumbler lock, pre-1950s, high-carbon steel. You have 9 minutes before the morning security patrol rounds the corner. The tension was suffocating. The click of the safecracker's stethoscope was the loudest sound in the city. Click, click, click. Time compressed into agonizing seconds. Back at the estate, Karen watched the second drama unfold on a split screen. She saw the GPS dot representing Marcus's extraction truck, carrying her rightful pergola, begin to move, pulling out of the warehouse district and heading toward the colossal trans-global tower. The pergola is in transit, Richter confirmed, his voice tight. Simon's assets are secured. Now for the patent. K-Chunk. The basement vault's heavy locking mechanism finally gave way. The steel door groaned open. The team found the patent contract immediately, a thick sealed document in a fireproof tin. But beside it, they found a small, innocuous manila envelope. Inside, a simple handwritten note. The second team relayed the message to Richter, who read it aloud, his voice strained. It's from Simon, ma'am. It says, did you really think I'd forget who taught me to always hold the better collateral? The patent is yours, but the loan is from a much older friend. Check the collateral on the loan. It's what you value most. Karen felt a cold knot form in her stomach. Simon hadn't used the patent as collateral. He had used the patent to lure her to the vault, knowing she'd take it. But the real collateral, Richter, following the new financial thread provided by Darrell about the loan terms, located the final signature line on the loan documentation. The silent backer, the angel, had demanded two things: the cross-flow AI patent, which was now recovered, and an interest in the land use rights for Simon's former corporate headquarters, a prime Manhattan tower site Karen had scooped up for Ventures 6 months ago in her hostile takeover. Simon had sold the site to Karen but reserved a secret, complex option in the land use agreement, which he now used as collateral. The angel, the lender, is not a financial entity. "Ma'am," Richter whispered, his horror barely contained. "The lender is the City of New York Employee Retirement Fund. Simon tied the loan repayment, due Monday, to a mandatory, immediate forfeiture of the entire Manhattan site back to the pension fund if the loan is defaulted. He set the terms, so the only way to pay it is to sell the Asian sector, just like he demanded. If he loses his launch party, he defaults, and we lose the Manhattan site to a federal entity. He didn't steal the land, he gave it an unbreakable lien." Karen swayed slightly, staggering back against her desk. Simon had tied her failure to a massive civil scandal, the forced liquidation of a Ventures asset to satisfy a city pension fund. He was weaponizing public opinion and government bureaucracy far beyond a single container of toilet paper. She looked at the clock. 5:30 a.m. The trans-global installation was minutes from completion. The retrieval of the patent was a hollow victory. The real fight was still ahead. "Ma'am, Marcus's riggers are sending final confirmation," Richter said, his voice a tight wire. "The Riviera Pergola is locked into place on the trans-global tower rooftop." "It's done." Karen grabbed a pair of high-powered field glasses from her desk and ran out onto the balcony, ignoring the scattered tools and the huge, permanent black Aries structure. She located the New York skyline, still shrouded in the deep indigo of pre-dawn, as she focused the lenses on the Trans-G. The brilliant morning sun illuminating her stolen pergola on the trans-global tower felt less like a victory and more like the flash of a firing squad. Karen Varan stood on her balcony, the field glasses lowered, the thrill of Simon Cross's humiliation instantly overshadowed by the chilling reality of the Manhattan lien. The City of New York Employee Retirement Fund. Simon hadn't just set a trap. He had politicized his revenge, forcing Karen to choose between her most profitable division, Asia, or her most valuable future asset, the Manhattan site, all while facing public outcry for jeopardizing civil servant pensions. "The problem isn't the money, Richter," Karen stated, turning back into the study. The permanent installation of the Aries pergola was complete, a monument to a crisis averted, but the true disaster was looming. The problem is the optics. If Ventures defaults, the headlines won't be about Simon's criminal conspiracy. They'll be about billionaire Karen Varan steals pensions. I lose all political standing, and the Manhattan site is gone by Monday's closing bell. "So we pay the loan," Richter insisted, gesturing at the financial projections. "We sell a small segment of the Asian contracts, pay the principal, and unwind the lien." "No," Karen hissed. "That is what Simon wants. He wants me to concede the Asian sector on his terms. We don't negotiate with terrorists, Richter. We collapse their infrastructure." Karen turned to Darrell, who was still huddled, shivering in the chair. "Darrell, I need the name of the contact who brokered the loan between Simon's shell company and the pension fund. Who is the angel in the flesh?" Darrell wiped his brow. "It was a deputy controller, a guy named Frank Kessler. He runs the real estate investment arm of the fund. Simon promised him a massive cut of the final Manhattan property profit off the books once the lien was activated." "Kessler," Karen repeated, the name burning into her memory. "Simon didn't just use the pension fund. He corrupted an official within it. That's the weak spot." "But Monday is too fast for a federal investigation," Richter argued. "We don't need an investigation. We need leverage," Karen said, her eyes glinting. She turned to Marcus Thorne, who was leaning against the mahogany doorframe, observing the corporate drama with detached fascination. "Marcus, your first favor," Karen declared, her tone absolute. "I need you to arrange an immediate private meeting. Today, Saturday afternoon. Frank Kessler, Simon Cross, and myself. No lawyers, no security, just us. Tell Kessler that Simon's collateral, the Crossflow AI patent, is compromised, and the loan is at risk of total default. Use the promise of the Manhattan site to lure him, and the threat of the patent's liquidation to force Simon's hand. Marcus pushed off the wall. A 3-person cage match in less than 8 hours. That is worth at least 2 favors, Karen. You are reckless. You signed the contract, Marcus. Now deliver the meeting. Saturday, 4 p.m. A neutral, heavily reinforced suite in a midtown hotel. The atmosphere was toxic. Frank Kessler, a nervous mid-level functionary with a high forehead and sweating palms, sat opposite Karen, trying to project authority. Simon Cross, still reeling from the rooftop humiliation, sat next to Kessler, his usual silk suit looking suddenly rumpled. His face a roadmap of cold rage. "Mrs. Varon, this is highly irregular," Kessler stammered. "The loan agreement is ironclad. If the principal is not paid by Monday, the Manhattan site transfers to the pension fund. Your attempts to circumvent this are unethical." "Unethical? I received a container of toilet paper instead of a $80,000 asset." "That is unethical, Mr. Kessler," Karen shot back. "Let's discuss the Crossflow AI patent. Simon guaranteed your loan with 2 pieces of collateral, the Manhattan property option and this patent. We retrieved this document from his warehouse vault this morning." Karen slid the fireproof tin across the table. Simon lunged forward, his self-control snapping. "You broke into my property? That's theft. This is illegal." "Calm yourself, Simon," Karen said, her voice dangerously low. "The property you refer to, the patent, was legally owned by your shell company whose CEO, Daryl, is cooperating with my security team. Since your company defaulted on its original operating loan 6 months ago, all its assets, including intellectual property, were subject to immediate liquidation. Your contract with the pension fund is based on the premise that this patent was valid collateral. It's not. It was a worthless asset on a failed balance sheet." Kessler's face went white. "Mr. Cross, is this true?" "The patent was insolvent collateral." Simon, cornered, glared at Karen. "It's a lie! She's trying to intimidate you, Frank." "The land is solid. We have the Manhattan site." Karen ignored Simon and spoke directly to Kessler. "Mr. Kessler, you accepted an invalid patent as collateral to justify a lien on a billion-dollar property, an agreement only possible if you personally benefited. You are about to hand the city pension fund a property tied up in 5 years of litigation over a fraudulently secured loan. If Varon Ventures is forced to fight this, I will spend every penny necessary to ensure the first target is the corruption within the pension fund. You will lose your job, your freedom, and your pension. And your name will be smeared across every tabloid Simon couldn't bribe." Kessler was visibly shaking. He realized he was trapped between Simon's greed and Karen's ruthless power. "What? What do you want?" Kessler whispered. "I want the lien on the Manhattan property immediately revoked. I want the loan principal returned to the pension fund without touching the Asian sector assets. And I want the shipping container of toilet paper removed from my lawn by 6 a.m. tomorrow." Simon, sensing his plan collapsing, finally played his last card. "You can't return the principal without the Asian sector, Karen. You don't have the liquidity. I checked your accounts. You're over-leveraged on the Aries construction." Karen smiled, a genuine predatory smile that reached her cold eyes. "That, Simon, is where you always misread the balance sheet. I don't need the Asian sector. I have a perfectly liquid asset sitting on my front lawn. Sunday, 5 a.m. The Varon Estate, East Hampton. The early morning was chaotic but efficient. 2 massive cargo trucks, emblazoned not with Varon Ventures' logo, but with the temporary branding of a hastily formed nonprofit, the Long Island City Sanitation Initiative, were backed up to the front gate. Simon Cross, pale and defeated, stood next to the toilet paper container, accompanied by a distraught Frank Kessler. Simon was here because Karen had promised him a final, public humiliation, and had threatened to put Daryl on the cover of the Hamptons Chronicle if he didn't cooperate. "I don't understand this." "Varon," Simon muttered, watching the crew begin to breach the container's seal. "How are you paying the loan?" "What is this?" Karen stood tall, watching the hydraulic saw whine as it cut through the locks. "You focused on the cost of the paper, Simon. $80,000 in refuse." "I focused on the value of the paper. Over 200,000 rolls of industrial single-ply. And thanks to Marcus, I found a buyer. She gestured to a nearby figure, a small, efficient woman from a major paper distribution firm, who held a certified bank draft. I liquidated the one asset on my property that was legally non-contentious and immediately movable. The contents of the container, not the container itself, Karen explained. This toilet paper, Simon, the ultimate symbol of your pettiness, has been sold to an emerging market distributor for $1.2 million cash in hand, payable immediately. Simon stared, aghast. $1.2 million? That garbage? It's a high-demand commodity in certain markets, Simon. You should know that. And $1.2 million is precisely enough to cover the principal of the loan you took from the pension fund, plus a handsome administrative fee for Mr. Kessler. Ensuring his silence and cooperation, Kessler, relieved, quickly pocketed the substantial check for the pension fund, already working on the paperwork to reverse the lien on the Manhattan site. He looked at Simon with utter contempt. Karen turned to Simon, holding the final document. Frank Kessler is filing a police report against you, Darryl, and Paperclip Investments for attempted bribery and corporate fraud. Your $80,000 joke just cost you your freedom and the remainder of your life savings. Simon looked around desperately, seeing his entire elaborate scheme collapse. The pergola mocked him from the city skyline. The paper that was meant to ruin Karen was instead funding her escape, and his crooked accomplice, Kessler, had flipped. Karen gave him a final, ruthless look. You taught me to always hold the better collateral, Simon, but I taught you that when you attack me, I don't just defeat you. I liquidate every part of you and use the proceeds to fund my continued success. By 6 a.m., the last pallet of toilet paper was loaded. The container was empty. Simon Cross was escorted away by an unmarked car, driven by one of Marcus Thorne's less friendly associates, destined for a meeting with federal authorities arranged by Kessler's panicked lawyer. The Manhattan site was safe. The Ares pergola stood ready for the gala. Karen Veron watched the empty container, a shell of its former intimidating self, finally being hoisted onto a flatbed, a symbol of a war won and a disaster averted. She had paid a heavy price in the form of Marcus Thorne's 2 favors, but she had survived. The saga of the pergola and the paper had ended, not with a financial loss, but with a colossal, ironic, and public demonstration of her lethal efficiency. The moral of the story was stapled to the side of the abandoned container, scrawled in black marker by Marcus Thorne's.